people with autism. How would you describe what autism feels like to someone who doesn't have it? Let me give you a non-autism example first. At the age of 8, I was diagnosed as legally blind, worse than 20/200 vision in both eyes. 20/250 on one side, 20/450 on the other. Nobody else noticed, because they thought that all the weird stuff I did to cope just seemed like weird little personality quirks, or developmental disorders. Then at the age of 8 I got my first pair of glasses, and found out that there was a whole sense that everybody around me had all along, that I hadn't, a possibility that had never occurred to me. I had noticed that other people could play catch much better than I could, that they could navigate unfamiliar spaces better than I did, that they could recognize objects from farther away than I could, but it never occurred to me that they had a sense I didn't have. I just thought they were smarter than I was. I just thought I was really stupid. Otherwise, why could they memorize room layouts faster than I could? Calculate where the ball was going to show up based on shifting vague silhouettes in the distance more accurately than I could, decode fuzzy shapes and colors faster than I could. Obviously they were just smart, and I was just stupid. So imagine how I felt when I found out that other people can, mostly, less often than they think, tell when they've hurt somebody else's feelings just by looking at them. That other people can see all kinds of subtle gradations of emotion that are invisible to me. It didn't occur to me until I was in my late 20s or early 30s and read my first magazine article about autism as a spectrum disorder that I realized that, once again, other people weren't smarter than I am about other people's internal states. They literally have an instinctive sense that I lack. But there are no glasses for autism. So 30 years later, I'm still having to navigate emotional conversations the way that 6-year-old me had to navigate a room after the furniture had been moved, more slowly than anyone else, and with intense concentration. Like everyone else is in on an inside joke that you don't know. And when you do know it, everyone thinks you don't, so they leave you out of it still. Most of what everyone else has said, but I'll add this. Feedback loop. Sometimes things just get stuck in your head. Not just songs or movies, but things you or someone else has said in conversation, which will then be repeated for no apparent reason. I catch myself saying the same things I've already said under my breath, but I'm not trying to understand the what or why of it. I just do it. I like very specific objects. I quickly develop really weird attachments that not even I can explain. In school, for example, I would always become attached to specific chairs in the auditorium, or in a classroom even. Any break from that order would throw me in a loop of anxiety that I could hardly escape from. I even remember where they were to this day. Second row from stage, third seat from left aisle. No one I spoke to could comprehend why I cared. Imagine if human sensory had settings, and all of them were at maximum, being really sensitive and self-conscious around everything. Also having really good acting and mimicking skills in conversations 24/7, otherwise people think you're weird af. I was diagnosed with Asperger's as a kid, which is grouped into the autism spectrum. Many sensory triggers, specifically sounds, are amplified for me. It's a blessing and a curse. I have little trouble hearing people, but shouting can be very overstimulating. It's also very difficult for me to explain myself, and I often have a hard time conveying my thoughts, including this post. I'm probably overlooking a whole plethora of other things I do. And then, there's the social aspect. Growing up, I was often singled out for not knowing what I'm supposed to do socially, as if it's an unwritten rule I was never told. I can't pick up on subtle hints about how someone's feeling, body language, etc., to save my life, so someone has to be extremely direct in order to tell me what they are going through. It's lost me a lot of friends as a kid. Thankfully, I've met some good people in my college life so far, and all of them have been very understanding with me. TL Doctor, everyone in the world knows what to do and how to act, but you, and you're never told, because it's an unwritten rule. Edit. Wow, I'm not really sure what to say. This post blew up like crazy. Thanks for all the support in the comments, and I'm glad my explanation helped so many of you. One thing I wish more people knew was how frequently we are excluded from many aspects of society. I never had any friends growing up, so I had a very bizarre childhood of growing up apart from my peers. When you're a bit odd, people don't feel like they have to treat you with even the most basic level of respect. I've always gone out of my way to be very kind to everyone I've worked with, but the majority of people I've worked with have treated me with open hostility. In one circumstance, I even had a job offer revoked because they discovered my autism during a pre-employment psych exam. When I appealed to their disability rights coordinator, he told me I wasn't qualified because of my autism, and that I was like a man in a wheelchair trying to run in the Olympics. Edit. Thank you for the supportive comments. My options with lawsuits were limited since it was a public university, but I did file a complaint with the state's Civil Rights Commission, and they would file a lawsuit if they felt I had a case. Despite having nearly everything documented, they claimed there wasn't enough proof, and didn't file against them. The university holds lots of influence in the region, and has had tons of other famous scandals that went unanswered for. They were literally considered above the law. If I could do that, it wouldn't have taken them 22 years to diagnose me. 26M, athletic, successful career as a welder. Absolutely no idea how to socialize, and no desire to. Completely alone, no friends my age, especially girls. If I'm with more than 2 other people, I completely shut down, can't process all the information I'm taking in. If I'm lucky enough to get a date, there is never a second, and I don't understand why. I've never been mean to anyone in my life. I work by myself, and then I come home and work on my fire truck, which I'm completely obsessed with. I go on vacation by myself, never anywhere with crowds, usually some remote fishing spot where I sit by myself all day. I'm the human definition of an island. Also should add huge anxiety issues, scared of planes, boats, elevators, falling asleep. It goes on. Sometimes it feels like the world is screaming at me. The feeling is so overwhelming that, no matter what I'm doing, no matter how much I may normally enjoy it, the only way to make it stop is to drop everything and run back to the safety of my bedroom. Often I don't even realize that I'm not interpreting a situation differently than most other people. Just because I express things differently, and maybe my affect seems flat, doesn't mean I don't have emotions, or can't feel sympathy. Of course, my flat affect can also signify my deep depression, which, like anxiety, afflicts people with autism spectrum disorders at about 4 times the rate found in non-autistic people. But it definitely doesn't equal a lack of empathy. I can only speak for myself. Everyone is different. It feels like you're in a play, and everyone has the script apart from you. Not my quote, but I saw it somewhere, and I resonated with it so much. First, I'd have to know what not having autism is like for me. It feels like I'm being forced to participate. I'm a society that actively works against me. Almost like being in a terrible play, where everyone has a script but me, and I get blamed for it. I am 28 years old, and have no idea who I am. Because I've spent my entire life copying those around me so that I can figure out how to exist. I have a different mask for each person I run into. And I don't know if any of them are really me, so please keep in mind, everyone with autism is different. Sensory issues are things around you feel big, but other people don't notice. It's like how after getting off an amusement park ride you can feel a jolt of excitement or stimulation, but it keeps going on, and it is just uncomfortable. Maybe a better way to put it is picture the feeling you get when something scrapes against a chalkboard. Crank it up a bit. Now a bit more. That's how some people with autism feel when they are having sensory issues with clothes, for example. You just want to get out of the clothes because they are too tight, or scratchy, or they just make you feel weird, not in a psychological way, but a physical way, and you just want to get out of them. You know they are clothes, but you just don't like them. I am a decently verbal person, I can write rather well, although this post feels rather jumbled as it is primarily stream of consciousness, but I wasn't always able to communicate. When there are issues communicating, I will gesticulate heavily and attempt to get my thoughts out by word association. Socially, I suck. I have pretty much no social skills, partially because of social withdrawal due to bullying as a child, but that is another post altogether. Now, unlike what some people might think, people with autism do find things funny. I just have trouble figuring on when something is conventionally funny, and I just don't understand some humor that others find funny, because it just makes no sense to me. Reading people's faces is the hardest, along with the tone of voice, especially if someone is jokingly yelling, for example. They also like changing expectations and expecting you to know where they are going. It's like everyone else got the rulebook except us. Many people with autism rely on routines. Personally, routines help me know what is coming and plan things in my head for possibilities of what may occur. I can't predict everything, but I can try to work out things that I think might happen and potential responses. However, this doesn't prevent me from thinking of what I should have said when I am trying to fall asleep at 3 a.m. and obsessing about it, just like a non-disabled person. Edit. Forgot one, people like to infantilize us. So, I'm 30. I can't drive, and I don't work right now. My parents usually drive me to doctor's appointments. They come into the appointments with me sometimes, especially on first visits to the doctor. Whenever the doctor asks a question, they ask my parents. They then direct the doctor to me, I answer, and then we continue. When they ask my medical history, I will rattle it off, I have a large chunk of it memorized, then look at my parents to get confirmation.